Hi, dear children. Welcome to the 11th session on the chapter How Do Organisms Reproduce? In this chapter, so far, we have learned about the different types of reproduction which is taking place in unicellular organisms and multicellular organisms with simple organization. We also learned about the type of reproduction which is taking place in plants. And now we are going to learn about the reproduction which is taking place in human beings, who are complex and highly evolved organisms. The life cycle of human beings, how can we divide them into stages? They can be divided into pre-reproductive, reproductive, and post-reproductive stages. What happens in the pre-reproductive stage? It begins from birth. A large number of changes takes place in our body. We start to increase in height, we start to gain weight, we develop teeth, that is a milk teeth initially, which is replaced by the permanent teeth. Many physical, mental and physiological changes takes place in our body. And all these changes are attributed to the process we can give the name growth. So all these changes which is taking place in our body after birth can be directed towards the process of growth. And once our body attains the capacity to undergo reproduction, and that stage is called as a reproductive phase. So pre-reproductive phase is the changes taking place in our body so that our body becomes fit for reproduction, and the reproductive stage is the stage when our body can undergo reproduction. And post-reproductive stage is nothing but old age of senescence, when the metabolism starts to slow down and a large number of changes takes place in our body and ultimately leads to death. So these are the different stages in the life cycle of an organism, including human beings. Now let us understand a peculiar pattern in these changes. Once we reach the age of adolescence, the changes in our body starts to accelerate. Till then, it would have taken in a steady pattern. But once we reach or on the onset of adolescence, these changes in our body starts to accelerate or it becomes faster at the age of adolescence. And what are these changes in the human body which is taking place during the growth at the reproductive stage? Some of these changes are common both in boys and girls. Increase in height and weight, growth of pubic hair, that is in the private parts, growth of oil glands in the face, self-conscious of our own bodies. All these are the changes which are common in both boys and girls. That is increase in height and weight, growth of hair in the pubic region, growth of oil glands in the face, and we become self-conscious of our own bodies. And these changes are common for both boys and girls. Whereas some changes are gender specific. In girls, at the age of adolescence, the development of breast takes place, that is a mammary glands. And menstruation begins in girls. We will be learning about what is menstruation. So menstruation begins in girl, which is nothing but the signaling given by the body that the girl is ready for reproduction. The facial hair starts to develop in boys. Voice begins to crack in boys. It is due to the overgrowth of the larynx or the voice box or the sound box which is present in the throat region, that is the larynx region. Occasional enlargement and erection of the penis in boys, that is the external genital organ which undergoes enlargement and erection in boys. So these are the specific changes which takes place during adolescence in boys and girls. All these changes show differences between people. It does not mean that in all the boys or girls which have entered into the age of adolescence, this pattern of change is having an uniform pattern. It is not so. It can differ from person to person. And all these changes are aspects of the sexual maturation of the body. It is giving us a signal that our body is undergoing sexual maturity. So all these changes are aspects of sexual maturation. That means our body has attained sexual maturity. We have learned in the previous modules that germ cells or gamete producing cells has to be produced for reproduction. We learned about the gamete producing cells in plants, that is anther, and inside the ovary there's an ovule which produces the egg. In the same way, human beings also develop germ cells. What are these germ cells? Nothing but the gametes. That gametes are, the male gamete is called as a sperm and the female gamete is called as the ovum. And the germ cells has to be produced so that reproduction can take place. Thus, the rate of general body growth begins to slow down so that the reproductive tissues begins to mature. So far, during the pre-reproductive stage, all the resources of the body was directed towards the general growth of the body. But during the age of adolescence, the general growth pattern starts to reduce and the resources are directed towards the development of the reproductive organs, the reproductive tissues, so that they can attain maturity and starts to produce the gametes or the germ cells, namely the sperms in boys and the ovum in girls when they enter the age of adolescence. Puberty during adolescence. What is puberty? We had learned in class 8. The onset of adolescence, when all these changes takes place at a very faster rate, is called as puberty. So during puberty, the period of life when the body undergoes changes leading to reproductive maturity, onset of adolescence, and until our body attains reproductive maturity is called as puberty. That means during puberty, the boys and girls undergo sexual maturity and they become capable of reproduction. What are the reasons for all these changes to take place in boys and girls? It is because of the sex hormones which are released by endocrine glands. We have learned that there are two types of glands, endocrine and exocrine glands. Endocrine glands are ductless glands which are involved in the release of hormones which are chemical messengers. And these sex hormones are released both in boys and in girls. The male sex hormone is called as testosterone. The male sex hormone is called as testosterone, which is responsible for the different changes taking place in boys at the time of puberty, so as to attain sexual maturity. Whereas in females, the sex hormones are estrogen. We have learned estrogen and testosterone. Estrogen is produced by the ovaries and testosterone is produced by the, yes, it is produced by the testes. And female sex hormone is the estrogen, which is responsible for the different changes produced in females at the age of puberty or adolescence. In addition to estrogen, progesterone and relaxing hormones are also produced, which are aiding the process of reproduction at the time of pregnancy and also at the time of birth of the child. So that is the role of progesterone and relaxing hormones. So the role, all the concomitant changes taking place in our body when our body attains puberty or enters into the age of adolescence is done with the help of hormones, the sex hormones, namely testosterone in males and estrogen in females. What is sexual reproduction? We have learned. How many parents are involved? 2 parents are involved. So the male gamete and the female gamete, which is produced by the male parent and the female parent, they fuse together at the time of fertilization to result in a single cell called as zygote. And this zygote develops into a new individual. So sexual reproduction is a type of reproduction in which 2 parents are involved, male parent and the female parent, and they both produce gametes, male gamete and female gamete. And these gametes fuse together and this process is called as fertilization, which results in a single cell called as zygote. And this zygote develops into a new individual.